My name is Detlef Stammer, and I'm the chair of the Joint Scientific Committee of the World Climate Research Program. I will be part of the introduction to this research forum. I will try not to start this before Helen is back, and I'm pretty sure she will be soon back. But we can start a little discussion to fill the gap here. Helen is again, and so Helen, I hope you can hear us.
Sorry, Detlef, I'm now here.
Okay.
Thank you for jumping in for me.
Maybe I use this occasion to actually introduce Helen Cleugh to start the introduction, and I will come back at some later point.
And I'm sorry about that, everybody, and welcome. Detlef has already introduced me, so I'll keep going. This is a rather busy slide, and it tells us the program for today's forum. We're running over 2 days. This is the first day. We'll come to an introduction in a moment, and then I'm giving an overview on the WCRP in session 1, and then we'll go to 2 sessions featuring keynote presentations on 2 important aspects of the World Climate Research Program. Firstly, a couple of our new Lighthouse activities in session 2, and then session 3, we'll be talking about capacity development, and then we'll have some wrap up at the end. And throughout the program, there will be a chance for Q&A and engagement with the audience via Slido, and have 2 more, which is presentations on one of our new core projects, Regional Information for Society, and session 5, which is not so much keynote presentations, but rather a roundtable discussion where we're focusing on the connections between WCRP and other programs, partner programs, if you like. And so we have some interesting participants, representatives from the UN Decade of the Ocean, along with Future Earth, and also one of our family from WCRP Cleugh, and there'll be some discussion there as well. So without further ado, Detlef you've already spoken to, but I'll hand over to Detlef to provide some welcoming comments, and then you'll hear back from me in a few moments. So Detlef, over to you.
Helen, thank you very much. I will be really brief so that we stay in schedule and time. And I also would like to really convey my warm welcome to everybody online. We now have 180 people online. That's really a nice number. This is a so-called research forum. It's one in a row of several research fora or forums. We have introduced or created these research forums as part or as an outcome of our discussion about the future of WCRP's work, its new science plans, in fact, its new foci to address urgent issues, urgent questions that needs to be solved over the next 10 years. And the idea of these research forums was really to, first of all, inform the community around the world about our new plans, get input from the communities that had not been able to participate in the previous discussion about this. So we can inform you, but we also can learn from your ideas, and also get those people who had not been involved in the past in WCRP's discussion to offer an opportunity to get trained, to participate. In fact, also provide information how to get involved in WCRP. And so to, in fact, account for the different time zones we go around the world. So this is one of several, as I said, focusing really on South America. I apologize that I cannot speak Spanish or Portuguese. It has to be in English in this case, but we really want to approach the regional communities and also hear about their needs, their thoughts, which certainly will be tailored to their environment, to their continent they live on. And so I'm really looking forward for this discussion. It will be exciting to see how it goes, how different it will be from the previous ones. And before I hand back to Helen, I really would like to thank already Helen and the entire team for organizing a very exciting program. Helen will lead you through the new WCRP science questions and the structure before we then enter, in fact, in exciting talks about the new lighthouses and new science. And with this, over to Helen and to continue.
Thank you very much, Detlef. More now, because as Detlef indicated, we have a fairly tight program, except just to really warmly welcome you all for joining. It's really great to see we're now almost up to 200 people, and I realise my internet is continuing to be a bit unstable, but hopefully you are still hearing me. So I also want to thank quite a few people. They're all on this slide. Firstly, our regional focal points who have provided the two, Liz, Cleugh and Boris. They've really done much of the work, along with the organising team who you can see there and their institutions. But we've also got some of our WCRP family who have also provided great support. Our Cora office, Beatrice, Amel and Anka, our Cordex International Project office, Anna and Lorena and Linda, our WCRP Secretariat, Narelle and Nico, and also the WMO. So I just really want to thank all of them for today as well. And I can see that we're still a little unstable. So here we go. Now, we've already been talking about Slido. So we're going to use Slido for both asking questions to our speakers and also to get you, our audience, to give us, the WCRP, some feedback. So if you want to ask questions to the speakers, please do so in the Q&A part of Slido, which hopefully you have got loaded now. You can ask your questions either in Spanish or in English. You can vote for questions that you like so that we can focus on the questions that are of greatest interest. We will aim to answer as many questions as we can in the time available, and if we miss some, we'll try and answer them either in one of the chat options or follow up after the forum. We'll do the best we can. So we're also going to be doing Slido polls and Slido surveys. Just making sure that I'm still here, yes, to get your feedback. So as a icebreaker, and many of you have already started, please make sure you've got Slido launched, and we will have a look and see where everybody's from. So here we go, that's fantastic. It's good to see we have got quite a few nations in South America, which is what we're hoping for, but people joining from lots of other places as well, which is fantastic. So I'll just leave this up for just a little bit longer, just to let everyone have a chance to type in their location. And we've got people from Argentina, Peru, Brazil, Colombia, as well as quite a few European, Portugal, Chile. It's fantastic to see. And more Paraguay, more Argentina, Portugal, and from Latin America, Central America as well. That's good to see too. It's fantastic. I'll keep moving, but keep typing in your places because we're recording all the information. The next question we're keen to know is whether you've heard of the WCRP. This is useful for us because one of our goals is to actually raise awareness of the WCRP. So it's helpful for us to know from our audience, and we've now got over 200 people. It's good for us to know whether you've heard of us or not. So I'll just wait a little bit longer, but maybe Amel and others will leave this poll open even when I start talking in the next session, just so people can enter their answers. But it's good to see that WCRP seems to be heard of by about 88 to 90% of you, but about half of you perhaps have been less involved. So hopefully after today you'll know more about WCRP, and you can tell us ways that you would like to involve with us. So I'm going to move straight to the next session, which is the presentation about the WCRP, but we'll keep this survey open a little bit longer so that you can keep putting your answers in. Okay. So even though it's got Detlef's in my name, because this presentation has been developed by the both of us, you'll mostly hear from me just to keep us on time, and Detlef will add some commentary later on during the forum. By way of context then, as I'm sure you're all aware, the demand for actionable climate information is greater now than ever before, and this is across many sectors of our society and our economy, whether that be in emergency services or in the energy and infrastructure sectors, and even our financial institutions. They're all asking questions about what does the climate future look like, and they're assessing what climate change means for them. At the same time, there are still many aspects of the climate system that require more research, more discovery, to advance our understanding and knowledge. It's especially so in the context of this urgency right now for information to better manage climate-related risks and opportunities. And this is really the role of the World Climate Research Programme, or WCRP. We take a lead in advancing and coordinating climate science around the world to build this foundational knowledge and understanding of the coupled climate system. And a really good example, of course, is we've just seen the IPCC's 6th assessment report publish their Working Group 1 report on the physical basis to climate change. Much of the science that underpins that is science that's coordinated by the WCRP. The climate modelling that gives input to that is being coordinated by the WCRP, and indeed many of the authors are from the WCRP family. Our new strategic plan describes how we're evolving our science to build this knowledge and capabilities that are needed to plan for, adapt to, and mitigate risks of climate variability and change. And this talk is an overview of our strategic plan and the new science initiatives and other mechanisms that we're developing through that to better support the needs of our partners and stakeholders. So we were established more than 40 years ago to address frontier science questions related to the coupled climate system. These are questions that are too big to be tackled and too complex to be tackled by any single nation or agency or scientific discipline. Rather, it needs a world research program to do this research into the global climate system, including its feedbacks with humans and natural ecosystems. It involves observations, analyses, and modelling across all time and space scales. And it needs coordination and collaboration around the world and across science disciplines. So we were established, as I said, over 40 years ago to facilitate that coordination and to advance our understanding of the Earth's climate system, including its predictability and especially how is it being affected by humans. Looking forward to the decades ahead, we recognise some of the real challenges that exist and that these need to be addressed through a worldwide coordinated effort, as I've mentioned. Meeting these challenges will require new science and new technologies and new ways of co-designing knowledge, as well as engagement with our stakeholders and a prepared scientific workforce. We need strong global partnerships because we cannot do this alone. So our new strategic plan, well, it actually was launched a couple of years ago now, addresses these challenges and the opportunities for the coming decade as captured in our vision. And it also clarifies our purpose or our mission, which is around coordination and facilitation. We aren't a funding body, but we do engage with funding bodies to identify priority research needs. Our strategic plan is available online. You can see the link here. There's also a short movie. So if you want to learn more and read more about WCRP's history and our strategic plan, then you can go. We really encourage you to go and take a look there. So this is just one extract from the strategic plan. It captures our 4 scientific objectives that you can see there on the right-hand side. The first three around fundamental understanding of the climate system, predicting its near-term evolution, its longer-term response. These are the areas of science that the WCRP have successfully advanced over the last 4 decades. The fourth objective recognises the urgent need to better integrate natural and social sciences to build a bridge between climate science and societal needs. This needs to be across a range of space and time scales. It's indicated by this arrow. And understanding, observing, modelling and collaborating are all at the very core of the WCRP. This depends on infrastructure, not just for observations and modelling, but also to support data sharing and data management, and our communication and outreach. To connect with the wider science community and stakeholders, we need to build partnerships and we need to address capacity building needs. And throughout, engagement and communication are always a priority for us. Since the launch of a strategy in 2019, we've focused on implementation, especially to identify the critical research that's needed in the decades ahead to achieve our outcomes. We've developed a series of new Lighthouse activities to support and even accelerate this priority research. These are designed, you can see the 5 there, I've just brought them up on the screen. These are designed to advance some of the new science and technologies and even institutional frameworks that are urgently needed. They might be new experiments, high visibility projects, or even infrastructure building blocks. They are ambitious, exciting, very externally focused. They are science for impact. They need to be successful, they need to draw on WCRP's core science and technical capabilities and strategic partnerships. They do not exist in isolation. They are linked to each other. And as I said, they draw on our core research. So you're going to hear today and tomorrow about 2 of the 5 new Lighthouse activities in some detail. So I don't need to describe them here, beyond noting that My Climate Risk is all about taking a bottom-up approach to quantifying climate risk in a way that is meaningful for the user, for the decision maker at a local scale. And you'll hear more about that. The WCRP Academy, if it meets its goal as defined here, will mean that we will have the next or current and next generation of climate scientists well equipped, not just with the knowledge and skills, but also the attributes that are needed to address the most pressing challenges that we have. I'll go into a little bit more detail on the other 3 then. Explaining and predicting Earth system change is all about making progress towards building an integrated capability for to quantify and observe and explain and provide early warning and prediction of Earth system change, focusing on the nearer term, so multi-annual to decadal timescales. It addresses the monitoring, observing and modelling of Earth system change, drawing on process understanding from across the WCRP. It will develop a capability that integrates an ability for attribution, prediction and projection, so that we're delivering assessments of current and future hazards along with early warnings, and that includes potential for abrupt changes. Now, this Lighthouse activity has a range of activities planned, but the most immediate one is this exciting workshop, which is coming up very soon. And if you're interested, there's still time to register. So hop on the website and have a look there. Safe landing climates is all about exploring routes to safe landing places for human and natural systems, to explore pathways to avoid dangerous climate change. It's intended to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, as well as providing the science to inform mitigation and adaptation. It takes an Earth system approach with a focus on much longer timescales, from multi-decadal to millennial timescales. And it has 5 themes, as kind of indicated by the cartoon, but just to be very clear, these 5 themes start with defining safe landing pathways and what that means, understanding high risk events, high impact, perhaps low probability events and what they look like. And then 3 themes focusing on the carbon cycle, water resources, and sea level rise. Digital Earths is about developing a digital and dynamic representation of the Earth system by optimally blending models and observations. It's essentially building the integrated information system needed to describe the past, present, and future states of the planet. It has 3 or 4 key activities. One of these is around developing global and regional digital Earths through demonstration projects around the world in partnership with national and regional efforts. It will also have a focus on building expertise in ultra high resolution modeling, and also building expertise in data assimilation for climate models, building on existing NWP and reanalysis efforts, and the power of our Earth observations. And all of this will need to exploit advances in digital technologies, obviously in high performance computing, but also developments in artificial intelligence and machine learning. The Lighthouse activity science plans have all been submitted in the middle of this year, and they're available at that link there that describes the science plans and scope and some of the initial activities. We're now then in the implementation phase of these Lighthouse activities. And one of the steps in that implementation is continuing consultation and engagement so that we can strengthen the diversity of the science community, both as contributors to the research, but also users of the research. We want to co-design some of the activities with key partners and get input from our stakeholders. And we want to ensure that these activities are well linked to our core research, which I'll come to in a moment. We're also talking with potential funding partners as well, and we'll provide more information in the final session of this forum about how you can link to these Lighthouse activities. But I want to turn now to these core research capability of the WCRP, because fostering and delivering the research and the technologies that are needed to advance our understanding of the Earth's climate system and to quantify climate risks and opportunities is an ongoing priority for WCRP. This requires a range of skills and capabilities. I've listed some of them there. WCRP has fostered and developed these capabilities and this core research for its lifetime, for many decades, and we're committed to ensuring that these capabilities and this research endures and is sustained into the future. They are the very foundation of the climate system science that is supported and coordinated by WCRP. And organisationally, this core research exists through our core projects and several working groups and panels and advisory councils. And so under our new strategic plan, we've modernised this a little bit. We have our ongoing 4 core projects that I've listed here. These will continue into the future. I do not have time today to go through the very rich research that exists in each of them. But you can go and read up about them at their websites. So Cleugh is about climate and ocean variability. GWEX is our global energy and water exchanges. Cleugh is looking at the interaction between the cryosphere and the climate. And Spark explores the role of the atmosphere in climate variability and prediction, both atmospheric dynamics and atmospheric chemistry. These 4 core projects are ongoing. They have links to each other. They have joint panels and joint activities. We've developed 2 new core projects, that really reflect some of the important science that we need to address in the coming decade. The first is uniting our efforts in modelling and observations into a new core project on Earth system modelling and observations that doesn't just look at modelling and observation separately, but the fusion of the 2. It will strengthen and continue the work of our working groups, which many of you might be familiar with, such as our working group on coupled modelling, which is where our CMIP work resides, and it will take the work forward of the councils that existed in the past. You will hear at this forum more about the new core project on regional information for societies. This is about building the science and capability needed for the provision of societally relevant climate information. And it will include the important work being done by our Cordex project that will continue within this new core project called RIFS, and the work of the working group on regional climate. And as I said, you'll hear more about this at this forum. These two new core projects are still being designed and developed. Some of you might be familiar with WCRP's grand challenges, which have delivered some really important science over the last few years to decade. Some of these will sunset, or all of them will sunset, I'm sorry. That means some of them will end because the science has been achieved, their goals have been achieved, and some of them will continue under other elements of the WCRP. So speaking of elements, this slide is intended to just summarize the elements of the new WCRP and how they fit together. I'll start at the top, which not only has the title, but it has our three co-sponsors, the WMO, the International Science Council, and the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. So WCRP has three co-sponsors. The overarching scientific direction and guidance is provided by the Joint Scientific Committee, or JSC, which Detlef and I are chair and vice chair of. Joint simply refers to the fact that we have three parents, if you like, three co-sponsors. We are supported by a WCRP Secretariat. In fact, the whole WCRP is supported by the Secretariat, not just the JSC. At our very core, as I've said, are our core projects, which I've just finished talking about. Each of those core projects is supported by an international project office, which also provides important connection across WCRP by liaising closely with the Secretariat. And then we have our new Lighthouse activities. And then I've listed down the side here, or the slide lists, some of the activities and fora that we do, just so you can get a sense of all the different things that WCRP sponsor and develop. And most of these are co-owned or jointly owned by more than one element. We've been on a journey since we launched our strategic plan in 2019. This journey we think of as a soft transition to our new WCRP. It's proceeded in roughly 3 phases. It started with a consultation phase in 2019 to 2020. And then through last year and into this year, we've been designing and developing the new elements, refining and assessing the ongoing activities such as the core projects. And these are now all approved and are in place. So now we are in our implementation phase where we're consolidating the work, identifying new science that needs to be done. And the new WCRP will be fully fledged and launched in early 2023 at our Open Science Conference. And if you haven't heard about our Open Science Conference, you can hop on our website and read more, but there's a brief look at what the flyer looks like. The other thing we want to do at our Open Science Conference is to celebrate the achievements in the science that we've done over the last decades, particularly the grand challenges. So that will be an opportunity for celebration as well. So I realize I've gone a little bit over time with all of these technical hitches. I've just got 2 slides to finish up with, and they really turn the focus from being inward and on the WCRP and our structure to being more outward facing, because it's actually our community, our co-sponsors, our partners working together that's really important to us. It's a joint climate future. And so we're really keen to work with all of you and to support national agencies towards our common goal of ensuring that we have the climate science, knowledge and information that's relevant and accessible. It's going to require the best minds across physical and social sciences, and it means engaging with the next generation of researchers, so our early career scientists, and it means improving the diversity of our community. And we're really keen to explore ways to better connect with you, both during this forum and afterwards, and we'll explore this more in the last session. We're really keen for your feedback. You can help shape our WCRP. We welcome your suggestions on all that you've heard and that you hear throughout this forum. And you have a chance to do that with Slido in a minute. But I want to use this slide finally to just say a very large thank you to all of you who have supported us on our journey, whether that be as part of our sponsoring agencies, national agencies, partners, collaborators. We really appreciate the support that we've received from you, and we really welcome you to continue on this journey with us. And we'll talk more about how we can do that in the last session. But for now, I'm going to stop talking about my stuff and the WCRP, and I'm going to ask you to give us some feedback. So there's just 2 questions in this first survey. The first is, assess or rate our future goals for addressing climate information needs on a scale of 1 weak to 5 strong. And I'll just let that sit there for a minute while you enter into that. Is this actually updating, Narelle? Ah, yes, there it is. Excellent. Didn't think we were going to all be at 5. Great.
I mean, I don't think we mind if it's all at 5.
I know. I would just be suspicious.
Do you think I'm in there ticking 5, 5?
That's right. Yes,
Oh,
that's right. We want to make sure that.
Oh, look, someone's decided that 4 is also 5.
That's good. So I'll just sit here a little bit longer just to give you a chance to reflect, because I realized that was quite a lot of information to absorb. I'll go to the next question. The survey will stay open, so you can keep putting your numbers into that one. I must say that's a really, really positive feedback from our audience. How many have we got? 220. That's really, really great. So the next question, many of you have already got in there. That's fantastic. To describe any climate information knowledge gaps that you see. Now, it's impossible for me to synthesize all this right now, but what we do is we take this away and analyze all of the responses that we get from you, and it's really, really instructive to us to see the areas of focus that you, our stakeholders and our researchers and our partners see as important for this region. As Detlef said in his introduction, we're really keen to know more about the needs of this very large and probably very diverse region. And we're seeing my Spanish, unfortunately, is very poor, for which I apologize, but I can see the needs around extremes, early warning, higher resolution information at local scales. I saw some about data as well, which is important, unified reanalysis. Okay, all right. Well, we'll leave, if it's all right with our Slido controllers, RML, maybe leave this open a little bit longer, and because I'd like us to go to the next session. But thank you for all that rich information that you're providing to us. My computer has decided to, here we go. It's woken up again. So we're going to move now to the next session, which will be chaired by Boris. So I will actually stop sharing and hand over to Boris, and we'll hear about the My Climate Risk Lighthouse activity. Thank you. Over to you, Boris.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Helen, for this introduction. And so now we are going to get into the detail of the concept of one very important lighthouse activity for South America, which is climate risks. And for this, we will have two speakers very much involved into the WCrp Academy. And we will start with actually the co-chair of the WCrP Lighthouse activity, My Climate Risks, Regina Rodrigues. So Regina is a professor of physical oceanography at the Federal University of Santa Catarina in Brazil. And our research has focused on understanding how tropical ocean basins interact and affect extratropical circulation at the extremes, both on land and in the ocean. So yeah, she's currently a member of the Cleugh Atlantic Regional Panel and of the IPCC working group dealing with climate change mitigation. So, and as I mentioned, she's also a co-chair of the Lighthouse activity Climate Risk, and she will present to us now. So Regina, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Boris. I'm gonna. Are you hearing me well?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna share my. Right. Can you see well?
Yeah, yes, we can see it.
Yeah.
Regina.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay. So as Boris said, I'm Regina Rodrigues from Federal University of Santa Catarina, Brazil, and I co-chair the Lighthouse activity My Climate Risk with Untitled Chapter from the University of Reading in the UK. So I will start with a brief explanation about the WCRP Lighthouse activities, but Helen already explained to us a little bit. But although WCRP contributes immensely to improve our knowledge of the physical climate system through decades of international collaboration between thousands of experts across many disciplines, we recognize the need to develop climate information for decision makers on a local to regional scale, and more generally to bridge climate science and society. With this in mind, the new Lighthouse activities were designed to be major experiments, high visible projects, or activities that truly integrated the capabilities and I mean scientific, technical, infrastructure across WCRP and with our partners. The main goal of My Climate Risk is to develop a new framework of assessing and explaining regional climate risk to deliver climate information that is meaningful at local scale. In other words, inverting the construction of climate information. In this sense, the three words in My Climate Risk are important. However, the most important of all is mine, which means your local climate risk. So this is our ambition. The new science that is pictured within My Climate Risk is not around models or observations or process understanding, but on how they are all used together with within a context of a deep uncertainty, i.e. with conflicting information and disagreement on which aspects of the information are most important. Specifically, My Climate Risk aims to develop and mainstream a bottom-up approach to regional climate risk, which start from the decision context and the decision scale, and enables relevant climate information to be brought into that context. By developing a new framework for assessing and explaining regional climate risk using all the available sources of climate information, we expected that climate information would be made meaningful at local scale, hence My Climate Risk. So these are some specifics of our science plan. First, the overall goal of My Climate Risk is to develop new paradigms for regional climate risk assessment studies, for example, through distilling generic versus context-specific aspects. The second is the key to this process understanding of the variability change of regional climate and climate extremes on target timescales with particular local context. My Climate Risk will largely draw on existing stakeholder engagement studies that have already generated knowledge on stakeholders' needs, working closely and locally grounded partners. A canonical activity would be to discuss current risk in a given situation with approximate explanation, and then develop storylines of future climate-related risk based on those explanations. And Anna's talks, the next talk, will exemplify this aspect. In this way, the past can be related to the future within a risk framework. Based on these ideas, we are not organizing ourselves in a traditional WCRP hierarchical manner of panels and working groups, which we don't feel it's appropriate for my climate risk. So instead, we are proposing a structure around a non-hierarchical ecosystem of labs, communities of practice, like a mycorrhizal network, sharing resources rather than competing for them, and anchored by mother trees in the form of regional hubs, similar to the concept of Wood Wide Web by Susan Simard. Moreover, we suggested that my climate risk be realistic and very practical, following the E.F. Schmarker's concept of intermediate technologies. It's a chapter of the book, his book, Small is Beautiful, from 1973, in which production methods should be used in workplaces located where people live now, rather than forcing them to migrate, cheap, relatively simple, using local materials, and mainly for local use. Noting that in our case, we are producing information, and we can draw on the worldwide storehouse of information through the entire WCRP and partners. So our challenges then. So we anticipate that we're gonna have some challenges to this kind of a bottom-up activity that is not specific to WCRP with our proposed structure and vision. And the first one is the lack of continuity due to the project cycle mode of operation and science funding model. The second challenge will be is the stakeholder exhaustion, in which repeated engagement from researchers serves only the researchers and not the local people. Challenges in documenting outcomes and publishing transdisciplinary work. That is going to be the type of work we'll be doing. And last, challenge with regards to equity and legitimacy should be addressed by creating frameworks that enable the establishment of equitable partnerships. And this requires a shifting perspectives on and process related to the design, implementation, and evaluation of success. And here I'm quoting Vincent et al. 2020. And here I should add that the climate scientific community needs to change a bit its perspective, i.e. the way of doing science, not so much business as usual. And that is what we are proposing here. And we hope to have the support of many of you. So our next steps then are to grow a network of regional hubs based on and driven by existing institutions who share values with my climate risk. The regional hubs should support and connect to local labs and would be represented on the my climate risk science team, providing the connection to the rest of the WCRP. Connection to the regional hubs would be nurtured through a variety of mechanisms, including training to develop trust and build long-term equitable partnerships. So right now we are putting together the terms of reference where we will define a code of practice with not only the rules and responsibility of our partners, but also the benefits. We are also defining membership with WCRP and non-WCRP members that are willing to engage and help move things forward with a good regional representation. And we need to get the engagement of South America to work with us as a partner or hubs, sharing the same principles. Where, with my climate risk, we wanted to make sure that the involvement of end users and their local needs are taken into consideration from the start of the process, i.e. a bottom-up approach to deliver science in usable, decision-ready format. We wanted to contribute by addressing knowledge gaps in South America and delivering the information that is needed at local level, which enhance the name My Climate Risk. Here I end my presentation with a few questions to guide our discussions after Anna's talk, such as what are the knowledge gaps in South America? But most importantly, how can we deliver the information that is needed in South America? And are there examples of bottom-up practices in South America? So, and that's what I would like to say, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Regina. So sure, there are plenty of questions that we could reply to at the end of the session. I recall that you can send your question on the Slido system, and we will now go to the next speaker, Anna Sörensson, who is a researcher at the Centro de Investigaciones del Mar y la Atmósfera del CIMA, and at the Instituto Franco-Argentino sobre Estudios de Clima y su Impacto IFAICI at University of Buenos Aires in Argentina. Her main field of expertise is on soil precipitation interactions, and she has been working with both observation and models to assess uncertainty in climate products in South America. She has been actively involved in the last IPCC assessment report, in particular as a coordinating lead author of the Chapter 10, and she's also a member of the GWEX Hydroclimatology panel at Wcrp. So Anna, please go ahead for 15 minutes or so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see if I can share my screen. Okay, so you see that?
Yes, good.
Okay, excellent. So morning to everyone. As Boris mentioned, I participated in the chapter 10 of the last IPCC report, which is called Linking Global to Regional Climate Change. And basically this chapter treats the title of my presentation today: how do we construct regional climate information that is relevant for risk assessment and decision making? So a lot from the presentation would be from the chapter. So the outline of the talk is as following: how the values and context influence in the construction of information, and why should we make them explicit? I will present what we call the distillation approach to climate information construction, and then I will try to explain what a storyline is and why it is useful for risk assessments and regional decision making. So to understand a new approach, it's useful to contrast it against the old approach, so to say. So here I show the traditional knowledge supply chain approach, where a user contracts a service from the scientist. And once that is done, the scientist has the control of the whole process of production or extraction of data, processing the data, and preparation of the communication material. So the problem with this is that the choices and assumptions are based on the values of the scientist, which can lead to misunderstandings of how to interpret the information, and the information might not be optimally useful for the risk assessment and decision making that the user wanted to have it for. So what are those values that I mentioned? We tend to think of climate science as objective and without values. So I will just give a very simple example just to illustrate what kind of values we face almost on a daily basis, I would say. So here is the scientist, and she is struggling to decide which emission scenario to use when producing future climate information. She can't use all of them because she has limited resources. So when talking to colleagues from her lab, she got different views. So the traditional climate scientists want to use strong emissions, large emission scenario, because that will give a strong regional climate signal in the climate model. The politically engaged climate scientist will want to have scenarios that are consistent with the Paris Agreement, because otherwise, if we don't include them, we will send a wrong signal to the policymaker, and we will sort of say that we don't think that the Paris Agreement is achievable. Then we have the prudent climate scientist that wants to use the 4.5 scenario, the middle of the road scenario, because it just seems to be more likely, it's in the middle. Okay, so this is a very simple example. I think we all can relate to this. But also context of both the scientist and user influences in the construction of climate information. So now again, a very simple example to understand what the context can be is the example of the temporal scales. So as an example here, I used the temporal scale of the latest IPCC report. We used 20-year long windows to represent the near term, mid-term, and the long term. And as you are probably aware of, traditionally, climate science has focused on the long term, so the end of the century. But that is not, even if it gives a very large signal of climate in the models and everything, it's not very useful for the policy making. On the other hand, we know that the near term is very challenging due to the internal variability, and we can't even distinguish well between the different scenarios when we look at the global surface temperature. So this is a very challenging time window. The midterm, the mid of the century, is now given more attention, for example, by IPCC. And this is because I think that some users require it, mostly the infrastructure section in developed countries. But we have still issues with the useful timescales. There's a mismatch in timescales of climate information and political cycles. This is particularly true for developing countries. In a review article by Singh et al., they found that in Africa and India, there are very few clear examples of long-term climate information being used to inform decisions. And the successful examples they found of climate or weather information being integrated in decision makers used timescales on week to seasons. Okay, so these were two examples on values and context, but there are many more areas where choices are influenced by the values and context. For example, very important for us as climate scientists is the selections of sources of information. So, for example, the types of information, what do we have available for the region we want to study? What type of information is the scientist familiar with? Then we have the dynamical models, we have the statistical downscaling, the different methods there. We can use process understanding, we can use attribution, even we can use user knowledge and indigenous knowledge when we produce climate information. So there are a lot of areas where choices are influenced by values and contents, and I really recommend, if you're interested in this, to have a look at chapter 1 and chapter 10 of the report of IPCC. So now we are going to look at the distillation approach. So this is an alternative to the linear supply chain approach. In chapter 10 of the report of IPCC, we found that the literature around useful regional climate information proposed what we call a distillation approach. So if you have a look at the chapter, you can download it from the IPCC page, you see that this is the first figure of the chapter, but it's not very apt for PowerPoint presentation, unfortunately. So I will present the key elements in bullet points to you now. Climate information is co-produced together with the user, considering the values and the context of everyone involved in the process. Next, on sources of information, start off with an open mind of what sources of information you can use, and use all sources of information available that are relevant for the context or fit for purpose. Then the climate information is distilled or synthesized from the different sources. And this can be in form of storyline, graphics, data with uncertainty estimates. And lastly, the user-oriented climate information for communication is produced. So by this, I mean for divulgation of the results. So I just also want to mention that it is important to notice that although these are well-defined steps, this process is not linear, but it is circular. So we can go through these steps over and over again and keep learning together with the user of the information. So now I will use the rest of the talk to talk about storylines, because this is a new concept that is, well, new at least for climate scientists, and it's being used a lot in the community. Okay, so what is a storyline? So here we have the definition from the IPCC AR6 glossary. It's a way of making sense of a situation or a series of events through the construction of a set of explanatory elements. Usually it's built on logical or causal reasoning. So there's a lot of different examples on storylines. Please have a look at these references here if you are more interested, or we can discuss it in the Q&A. I will focus mostly on the dynamical storylines due to time limits. So just a bit of background to why storylines is thought to be needed. We have high confidence in thermodynamic aspects of climate change, such as global warming, sea level rise, or atmospheric moisturing. But the dynamical aspects of climate change are much more uncertain. So projected changes in large-scale circulation differ a lot amongst models and gives high uncertainty in future regional precipitation changes. Here, there's just a showcase of this. Don't care about the region. This happens in a lot of regions all over the world. So this is an example from the chapter 10 again, where we show an ensemble where we use 2 RCMs, 2 regional climate models, and 2 global climate models to downscale this area. And we see that we get very different results in the precipitation. This is not only true for downscaling, but we get it in the global climate model simulations as well, for example, in the CMIP models. And we are used to represent it in this way, something like this, you know, a time series with a multi-model mean and an uncertainty estimate, or as here, we've just plotted all the results of all the models. But there are several problems with this way of representing the results. The model mean can be close to 0, but that doesn't mean that the future risk is low. And actually, the multimodal mean shouldn't be interpreted as the best estimate of climate change. But furthermore, and this is very interesting, because social scientists have found that communication of the full range of outcomes and uncertainty can be a barrier to the uptake and use of the results. So that is why we try with storylines. And this is a causal network that we use to describe the concept of the storyline. So here we can have some elements that we block. We can specify some elements. We can have leave some elements variable. And what we look for is actually information about the impact, because we are interested in know what future impact will be for the regions. So the impact is composed by the exposure and the vulnerability and the hazard. And as climate scientists, we work with providing the hazard to this equation. So in the dynamical storyline, we decide to fix the global warming to a certain level. We know that global warming depends on climate sensitivity and climate forcing, but we don't care about these elements because it gives us a large uncertainty. We just say, okay, let's look what happens at this global warming level. And then this global warming level can lead to different changes in the remote drivers. So we decide to study some of the changes that can happen in the remote drivers. So we fix these remote drivers at different conditional possible future, right? And then we look at what happens with the dynamical condition, the regional warming, and how these produce the hazard that we are interested in.
Anna, you have 2 minutes left.
I will give a practical example of a storyline that we used in an attribution example in chapter 10. This is about past multi-decadal increase in summer rainfall in southeastern South America. In this case, the climate forcing is both natural, it's the Atlantic multi-decadal variability, and human in the form of greenhouse gas forcing and stratospheric ozone depletion. Here are the remote drivers and the dynamical condition that leads to the hazard, in this case, the increased summer rainfall. So this example was created to think about and explain and make visible the different drivers of the present situation, but we can also play around and use it to think about future changes. For example, we expect the stratospheric ozone depletion to decline in the future. So this particular forcing will be less and less and contribute less to this branch. So there's a lot to say on storylines, and but my time is running out. So I'm just going to summarize this by giving some regional climate information key messages. So make values and context explicit and take into account the values and context of all actors. Let the context and the fitness for purpose guide the selection of sources of information. Storylines are tools for studying and communication regional climate change that make sense of a situation or a series of events. So thank you very much. Stop here.
Thank you very much, Hanna. So now we are starting our question and answer session, so for a few minutes. So the way we can proceed is to select the most popular questions on the Slido. So let me see which answer come first here. So we will start with this question, but please, in the audience, feel free to ask us questions as we go. So the first question is for Regina. What are the requirements to join the hubs? Do we need to be part of a university, meteorological institute, international organization? Regina, could you?
Yeah. So we are putting together these two, the code of practice or term of reference, and how we're going to do that. We just developing is to the Lighthouse activity, but I would say in principle could be a university, meteorological institute, international organization. But the most important thing about this climate risk Lighthouse activity, we wanted to do a bottom-up approach. As far as that this group, this lab, or group of labs or institution already has a contact with the local end users and wanted to do that with that context, then it's okay. We don't want a top-down, just have a institution or the director of the institution working, and it's something that's just too top-heavy. You know, so we actually would like to engage with smaller labs that actually already are doing work with the local user and know their concerns, and then we will build this science from bottom-up approach. And so it's just to add that we will have the new web page soon running, and then we will have a list, an email list that you can get updates, and also how to engage, and then how to become a hub and participate and engage with WCRP in due course.
There is actually a related question that is, does My Climate Risk have any plans in interacting with the WMO regional climate centers for the regional hub development? So I suppose this is a positive answer, no?
Yeah, I think so. And we want to interact with, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. And, you know, we know that climate risk is a very broad subject, and it has a lot of institutions and other parts of the WCRP and WWCP are working in that. So we would like to engage and use all the partners as possible. I mean, you know, it's not just us that we're going to do this. We needed the partners. We needed the engagement, anyways, of everyone. So we should engage with the regional climate centers too.
So now we have a question for Anna now. Does the storyline approach is a way to deal with the too large spread in model projections? So this is the first part of the question. And then how do you evaluate robustness in a particular storyline?
Okay, so I'll try to answer to this. So the thing is that the large model spread for is due to, for example, if we have a projection for a specific scenario, then we know that the response of the models are conditioned on the scenario, right? But in this ensemble, it will be a mix of the model responses and the internal variability. So there is a mix of uncertainties that the storylines try to disentangle. And the large spread of this ensemble is can be due to that some of the models respond to the global climate change, creating some large-scale responses, and other model created some other large-scale responses. And then these two large-scale responses can give different, for example, precipitation response on the ground. So when you do the mean of these two, you get like a situation that is not physically plausible. It would never happen, because it's either this one that is true and this, or this one, because these are the way the models work, and they are based on physical principles, but the mean of them are not the same. So it's not what the storyline trying to do is to try to disentangle the physical processes behind. And we can reduce uncertainties. For example, if we find that one subset of models respond to global warming in a certain way that is not physically plausible, we get reasons to believe that, we can discard that one. So then we can reduce the uncertainty. And I think that the robustness does indeed increase, because it is based on physical knowledge, which is an extra line of evidence. So I don't know, I think that I stop there.
Thank you. Yeah, I see a related question here by Kevin Webb. Should we not go for a worst case scenario, as this year climate events predicted for the future are already happening? So I suppose the question is about, we already know on the most probable, on some of the most probable source of uncertainty. So this is also a way to orientate the storyline. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it is possible. And actually, if you look at the chapter 4 in the IPCC report, they have an example of high climate model sensitivity storylines. So they show what would happen if the climate, because we don't know exactly what the climate sensitivity to carbon dioxide is. We have a spread, right? So what if the sensitivity is really high, and what if we have really large emission scenarios? So yes, it is definitely a way to explore high risk and perhaps low possibility outcomes. So that is exactly one of the cases where it will be really useful to use a storyline approach instead of a multi-model mean.
No. No, I guess. Your microphone, Regina. Regina, could you hear?
No, I couldn't hear what you said. Just can you repeat?
So the question is, how does my climate risk intend to approach local society and stakeholders?
So what we want to do is approach labs or institutions that already has this local links. For instance, we already are working with the Himalaya Consortium, University Consortium in the Himalayas, which is an organization of several universities, but also they work already with the locals, and then have this engagement already, and that's how we want to do. That's why we needed these hubs. That's why we want to the structure of my climate risk be different from work packages, and because if we do the work packages and scientists, it's going to be just the scientists, and we needed this link with the stakeholders, and then we were looking for labs or that already do this type of research, or that has the engagement to try to engage with the local problem, and then we're going to build from that point up, and then we will draw the information that we need from other parts of WCRP RIFs, because one of the questions I heard, I read that is not overlapping with RIFs. RIFs is the home that will do all the research related to risk. And then we will get that information that they provide, or people that are interested in work and can use the Lighthouse as to do small labs where they can actually apply in the real world through the link with these institutions or lab that already has the local knowledge and link to build then backwards, let's put it this way, which is along the line of Anna said in a theory, basically.
Okay, yeah, we have here a question on the availability of climate products. And the question is why Cordex models sometimes are not easily available for South America. So this is more a question about, access to information. So this is a concern for South America.
I think Silvina would be the person more.
Yes, Silvina, are you okay? Sorry, this is Helen intruding here, but I know Silvina is online. She might wish to answer that. So, Silvina, over to you.
Sorry, I didn't want to jump in now because Cordex related issues are going to be discussed tomorrow. So if you have a little bit of patience, I prefer to discuss this tomorrow, to give the floor for the presenters today. Thank you.
That makes sense, Silvina. Thank you. Hopefully we can join tomorrow. And Boris, we should just check in with Maria Laura to make sure that there's she hasn't picked out any key questions as well. And I'll now mute myself and hand back to you. Thanks.
Yeah, I think regarding the previous question, it could be more general. It's about all data availability. So it could be observed data and model data. So I think this is an issue we might discuss these 2 days also.
So maybe if I give an example, for instance, what we want to do is generally the science and the risk assessment and everything is done mainly by European and North American, where you have a lot of data, a lot of much more money, more infrastructure, and we want to do this in a way that we can use this knowledge but tailored for other regions like South America, where you might not have that much of data. So we're going to have to do some research in how we can get some risk assessment and use that information without having the same amount of data, the same amount of money, the same infrastructure. Then if we have, so it's going to be my climate risk a way of exchange knowledge in that respect and adapt and use locally that's, I think, the idea. We don't know exactly how we're going to do it too. We are working with this, but we want to engage from the beginning, and like say South America, and the people in South America can help us to build this together. Basically, that's, I think, what WCRP are doing with the forums, to engage with all parts of the globe.
Okay, thank you, Regina. And I see a question for Anna regarding data and storyline. Yeah. Are better regional climate models than global couple models to use on storylines?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think you can probably use both of them, although the global models have been used most this far.
This relates to the values of the research you were talking about, actually, no? Because some research is mostly regional models, some other use a global model. So
yeah, I think that the use of tools depends on our values, our formation, our past experience. The resources available at the workplace, it's very different to work in a place that has that perhaps doesn't even have a cluster of simulation, or to work at a very big center. So values is definitely one of the pieces of which I think when the values come in the selection of source, it would be like if you believe that it is not right to downscale, for example, or if you believe that your method is better. A very good example that I can just throw out is the question of, for example, now it's possible to use convective permitting models, and you can do one single run with a convective permitting model, but it will be a deterministic run. But you can then study high resolution precipitation processes. As opposed to this, you have the choice to download a lot of different single model initial condition large ensembles that are created to study internal variability. So today we have so many tools to use, and I think that the key point of the distillation process is to try to be open-minded when using. If you're not an expert on a special source, you can involve other scientists that are experts on that information source, and use the sources of information that are relevant for the problem, not just use the favorite tool. I think that is the main point.
And I think we have to go on with you, because there is popular questions, maybe more technical, but I have to ask because it's popular. So why the ensemble mean is not the best estimate? What would be a better estimate of the mean climate?
The ensemble mean is not a good estimate, because the ensemble is an ensemble of opportunity. We just use all the models available in community, and they have similar biases. So the mean wouldn't be a good representation, because you can have perhaps 80% of the models have one bias and 20% have another bias. So theoretically, it's like well known since the Knutte paper that I put on the slide since 2010 that this is not the correct way. And please, you can look at that, at the papers I put there, because it's too complicated for me to answer that right now, I think.
Okay. So we still have time for a few questions. I see here a question for Regina. What specific action will be taken in my climate risk to bring local communities engaged? So it's kind of a similar question than previously, but maybe more on concrete aspects on how to connect to the local community. So I suppose it will be through the regional hubs that will be there.
So I think what it is how we're gonna do this is that's how we're gonna get the hubs. We're gonna try to get the hubs that are linked to local community already, and then has this link. We from WCRP, we can't. We are too far away from the local people, the local needs. You see, and we have to engage with groups that are already working with the local communities, and we want to be diverse, inclusive, and not just be, you know, in a traditional Europe or countries that have more disposable income and infrastructure to do science. You see, that's why we are engaging already in the forums to try to, you know, the first step that we are doing it to let people know what our intentions, which is what we are doing now. So now a lot of you can know that this is happening. WCRP is more open now, and we, as I said, we're gonna be more open to via email and actually how we're gonna set some basic rules to get engaged. And these groups they will have to be a hub or to be participated. They will have to have the connection, the local connection, and this at heart. This you know, and then we can together try to engage, and then what is the needs and what we can help, and how you know we can develop something that will be meaningful to that local community using all the science available from WCRP. And that's pretty much the idea. We hope that the academy can work also with training. That's a really good way of doing this. You see, training not the locals, but training us about the local needs too. So we were going to use a lot of our training in this. This is going to be an important tool too.
And a related question by Pablo Borges: can International Development Agency contribute to the climate risk activity, or only research center and university? I think you already answered this question, but could you answer to Pablo maybe?
Yeah,
I'll just jump in. Sorry, I'll just jump in, Boris. This will need to be the last question so that we can go to the next session. But sorry, Regina, do carry on.
No, yeah, it's quick. There is no restriction in that respect, which type of institution is. As the only thing that we need is that it has a local engagement. That's what is important. If that is at the heart, then I think we will not have any restriction in that. And the idea is engage all the sectors that is not just the scientific institutions, but other sectors of society too at this time. You know, that's the goal of my climate risk, I think.
Okay, since time is over, I'd like just to thank you again, Anna and Regina, for giving this very detailed overview of this important activity within the WCRP. And Helen, the next, so we will.
Yes, we'll hand over now. Thank you very much, Boris, for chairing that, and thanks to the speakers. And we'll now move to the next session, which is session 3, whose theme is capacity development in South America, and it will be chaired by Carla. So I will hand over to Carla to take control of the next session. Thanks, Boris. Thanks, Carla.
Thanks, Helen. Hello, everyone. So this session that will be about capacity development in South America will be presented. We will have two speakers here. First, Patricia Krekel will be presenting innovation in the WMO regional associations, diagnostic and recommendations. Patricia is an associate professor at the Federal University of Technology in Paraná, Brazil. She holds a PhD in applied environmental sciences from the Stockholm University in Sweden. And her main research areas are urban climate, urban air pollution, and the compilation of air pollutant emission inventories. And she's also an associate editor of the Environmental Advances Journal from Elsevier, expert on short-lived climate pollutants, and collaborating with the IPCC. And she's also a member of the research board of the WMO. So Patricia, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
So thank you for the invitation and the presentation, Carla. I will now share my screen with you. So, okay.
Sorry, Patricia, it's like tickling your computer.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if
Okay.
it's my.
Is that okay now?
No. Otherwise, we can ask the secretariat to share your.
I have it ready if we want to share
Okay.
it from here.
Maybe
I stopped sharing my presentation.
Please.
Yeah, it might be my internet connection that is not good enough. Perfect. So, as I said, as Carla introduced me, I'm a member of the research board. Next, please. And the research board on weather, climate, water, and the environment was created in June 2019 as part of the governance reform. And it translates the strategic aims of the World Meteorological Organization and decisions of the executive Council and Congress into research priorities, and also ensures that the research programs are implemented and coordinated. Next, please. So at the moment, we are working on 4 key relevant topics, which are advancing Earth system modeling and observations, exascale computing and data handling, and machine learning and artificial intelligence, science for services, and the last one, innovation in the regions, which is a topic I'm going to present to you. Next, please. So this work was carried out by the following working group that is led by Arlene Lane. And here we have the representatives of the different regional associations that compose the World Meteorological Organization. Next, please. So why to study the innovation in the regions? Here we have 2 main topics, which is to guide the research board and the regional associations for setting the priorities for research and development in the regional associations, to coordinate science projects at regional level, to identify possible partnerships or even funding agencies to further engage science with the weather services, and to inform the research board on the key areas to be advanced during the period 2020-2021, and how to organize science topics for the science sessions at the regional association meetings. Next. So for carrying out this concept note, we used information from a web-based survey, and that had 2 objectives: to know the current status of the research in the World Meteorological Association regions, and to identify the challenges to engage the national weather services in research. The input for this service was coming from the research board members, the staff from the National Weather Services, some researchers, and early career scientists network. Next, please. So this is how the survey looks like, the first page, in this case in Spanish, because it was applied to the Regional Association 3, South America, and we have the participation of 5 countries: Argentina, Brazil, Ecuador, Paraguay, and Suriname. Next, please. So the survey was composed by 5 questions. How can research in the academic community be made available to the National Weather Services in relation to climate services? Which organizations are at the country or regional level are active in research? So this was supposed that each person responding was answering in relation to her own country. What is the status quo for funding mechanisms or schemes? Can you provide examples of partnerships that your National Weather Services had developed to link research institutions, with research institutions in your country or region. And the last one, identify one pressing regional problem that needs further attention from the research board. Next, please. So in relation to the outcomes, where does research take place? We found that two different groups, the regions that have more advanced scientific capacity, research takes place either in universities, national labs, or through regional entities. In developing regions, research is not the focus for the national weather services because they are pressed for human and technical resources to support the operational activities. And some of them conduct research on high impact events or for development of products. Next, please. Research funding also depends on developed and developing countries. So in developed countries, this research funding is very well established through government-funded research, through agencies that fund research in academia, laboratories, and even the private sector can call for proposals. In developing regions, there is some countries don't even have government-funded mechanisms, and they rely mostly on international donor projects and the private sector, and it's limited, the contribution, and some academic institutions. Next, please. So in terms of the common research priorities that we found among multiple countries, multiple regions, we can highlight the 6 following, which are climate and climate variability and climate change. For example, the implementation of climate services for sectors like agriculture, transportation, energy, health, etc. Climate risk analysis, assessment of climate change extremes, among others. Then related to tropical cyclones, we identify the prediction of track and intensity, geographic and subseasonal variability, and modulation by climate change. In relation to impact-based forecasting, how to translate scientific information into evidence for decision-making purposes and for various audiences. In relation to this disaster risk reduction, we found that a systematic co-design approach might be interesting, involving social scientists to improve communication of risk. In the case of hydrology, 2 important issues, among others, are coastal inundation and coastal erosion. And the last one, aviation, we identified that is required scientific advance in observation and forecasting. Next, please. So the challenges that we identified in relation to research in developing countries are the following. We need financial mechanisms, since there is limited funding for research, as already commented. Most research journals are published in English, which is a limitation. Education, usually secondary and higher education systems, are not research oriented in comparison to developed countries. Data sharing might be an issue, since there are various barriers like institutional, management, legal, and policy issues. And usually national weather services lack norms and tradition of more collaborative and multidisciplinary research. Next, please. So in relation, particularly because we address these questions in the 6 regional associations that compose the WMO, but in relation to South America, which is the regional association number 3, I commented that we got the participation of 5 countries, or representatives of 5 countries. So in Argentina, it was highlighted that the WMO should standardize gray literature publications and encourage publication in regional journals, identify common research topics between the academia and the National Weather Services that needs funding, develop research connected to urban and health services, and apply also artificial intelligence to improve nowcasting on climate services. In Brazil, it was highlighted to coordinate networks between researchers in connection with national weather services and create regional projects with NOAA related to satellites. Ecuador, we got the contribution that the research on interactions between climate and health might be an asset. And Paraguay highlighted that training and education of personnel working at the National Weather Services is very important, and research funding for multi-collaborative projects to develop climate services. Next, please. And finally, the recommendations to improve the research and development within the National Weather Services in developed countries are to the following: highlight research benefits, also research engagement, for example, through regional international collaboration. Also, WMO can help by engaging with funding agencies to promote international and regional projects. We need also research collaboration within the country and between countries in the regional association number 3. For example, and research funding is also required, training and education, and I highlight this point since we are talking about building capacity. So, and this training and education, for example, requires increased training opportunities and hosting, like National Weather Services could host university students to create this link between these two usually separated areas, which is the academia and also the National Weather Services. And also we need to work on access to data and applications, publications. So next, please. This is my last slide, and I would like to thank you, all of you, for your attention, and I'm available for your questions.
Thank you, Patricia. So I will encourage all the audience to put your questions through the slide, please, the live Slido. We will now go to introduce Pablo Borges de Amorim, and then we will have an integral Q&A session for the two speakers. So Pablo Borges de Amorim will be presenting the Wcrp Academy Lighthouse activity. Pablo is a technical advisor of the German International Cooperation Agency, GIS, in climate change adaptation projects in Brazil. He holds a PhD in natural sciences with emphasis on the development of climate change scenarios for hydrological studies by the Technical University of Dresden in Germany. And he has also experience in climatology, hydrology, climate extremes, and integrated water resources management. And currently he has been dedicated to the field of climate services with emphasis on climate risk assessments for infrastructures and training. And he is a member of the YES community, the Young Earth System Scientist Network. And since late 2020, he is a member of the Wcrp Academy. So Pablo, the floor is yours.
Hi, Carla. Thanks for the warm introduction. I will share here my screen. Okay, just let me know if you see
all
the
good.
Presentation.
Yeah, all good.
Is it good?
Yep, go ahead. Please.
Okay, good, thanks. So I will try to be as quick as possible. So basically I will explain, oh, sorry, there's a kind of, okay. So I explain what the Wcrp Academy is and the motivation behind the Academy and how you as in the audience can get involved. So I am actually here on behalf of a large group of experts that I will introduce later on. So the motivation behind the Wcrp Academy. So more than ever, the world needs climate experts. And climate expertise is particularly needed in countries that are most vulnerable to the negative impacts of climate change. And well, it's interesting to see this sentence, the world needs climate experts. And when I read this sentence the first time, it came to my mind a funny situation that happened with me last week when my cousin called me desperate because of the hurricane that hit New York last week and the huge drought that Brazil is facing right now. So, and then he knows that I work with climate change, and he called me and he told me that we climate experts must save the world. So it sounds a bit pretentious that the world needs climate experts, but given the despair of my cousin, I think that this sentence made sense. So the second motivation is, although there is a large amount of excellent climate science training available, coordination of access to this training would benefit those looking for it. And the third motivation is that the provision of climate science training could be made more efficient and sustainable by better connecting the providers and also the consumers of climate science training. Well, the challenge is that there are some barriers to better climate science training. So the first is that no institution can provide the complete training that, let me say, the modern climate scientists need. The second challenge is that climate science training could be made more useful if designed with the impact of climate variability and change on society in mind. Then barriers to access to training are primarily geographical and financial, not a lack of prior learning or design of training. And then the delivery of climate science training needs governmental, institutional, and philanthropic grants and paid for training. And last but not least, training at the scale and quality required for the next generation of climate scientists will require delivered both online and in-person training. So what is the Wcrp Academy Lighthouse activities? So the focus is that to train future generation of climate scientists. So for that, it will be developed a kind of a marketplace for climate science training, where the climate training providers can just place their offers there, and then users can search for specific trainings and find out what is available. So inward facing is the consolidation and register of Wcrp training activities, guidance and support for the Wcrp training activities and community building. While taking outward facing, so consolidation of training opportunities from external providers, and identifying training gaps and facilitating new training, and also address global inequities. So the timeline, the setup of the Wcrp Academy, it's about 2 years, and the horizon of activities is 5 to 10 years. So the Wcrp Academy is divided in 3 working groups. So we have the shares, and then we have the working group 1, which is the stock take. The goal of this working group is to design a mechanism to understand what training is available and what training is needed. In the long term, it aims to how to operationalize this function. And current work is definitions, develop, and stock take survey. The second working group is identity and the portal itself, so the website. So the goal is to establish a value proposition and a brand, to develop the web portal itself. In the long term, is to provide guides to develop of the platform And the current work is landing page, name, logo, portal requirements. So all of this is included in this working group too. And the third group is about finance. So the aim is to establish a business model on how to run this, let me say, the marketplace website, and also to build a proposal and options. Long-term is financial sustainability and mechanisms, and current work is looking for funding sources. So this is the group, the Wcrp Academy Science Development Team. As you can see, it's a very diverse group, which includes members from all around the world, but also from different career levels. Like FIBA and I, we are early career researchers and members of the Young Earth System Scientist community. In short, the YES community. So if you are early career, so I strongly recommend joining the YES community. There are a lot of opportunities there. So concerning the working group 1 activity, is based on the stocktake survey. So this survey was launched, I guess, about 1 or 2 months ago, and it is still open, and it takes about 20 minutes to fill up. So I strongly recommend you to do the survey, and also to invite everybody that you know that might be interested in climate science training. And very important, there will be a prize draw, so don't miss it. And you can see here there is like the web page address on the bottom of the presentation. On the right side there is the QR code, so if you just take your cell phone and take a picture, so it will link directly to the survey. And well, so far we gathered more than 400 responses. This is just like a preliminary result in terms of geographic representation of the responses in South America. And as you can see here, so most of the responses so far from South America, they come from Brazil, followed by Argentina, Colombia, and Ecuador. And yes, there are some countries that are still missing, like Bolivia, Chile, French Guiana, Paraguay, Suriname, and Venezuela. So if you are from any of these countries, so I strongly invite you to take part and to do the survey. And well, how to get involved? So there are many ways. The first one is to participate in the stocktake survey that will be open until November. So please encourage colleagues and students to take part in to identify the near future and long-term training needs. And also look out for the results of the stocktake to be published by the end of 2021, perhaps the beginning of 2022. So we will be able to answer, so where there is the gap and how could your organization provide training. And well, and then soon, maybe I guess in the beginning of the next year, we will start with the marketplace for climate science training, and the annual stocktake of available training gaps. So we will take this stocktake will be taken every year, no? And well, there will also be a call for nominations for the new chair and also for a consultant for the academy. And we will also participate in a workshop at the International Conference on Southern Hemisphere Meteorology and Oceanography 2022. And this workshop will be about assessing the climate science training needs for the Global South. So you can also read more about in those links. And so if you wish to get in contact regarding this activity, please email Narelle. She's also here and she can help me answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pablo, for your excellent talk, and Patricia too. So now the idea is to start the Q&A session. It will almost last for about 20 minutes, the most. So I encourage you all, I have seen that there are already some questions arriving in Slido, but I encourage you to please, instead of putting in the chat box in Zoom, please use the Slido to put your questions. So in the chat box in Zoom, I want to let you know, especially because I understand that there are many early career researchers here in the audience. We have pasted the YES community link to the website to find about what it is about, but maybe Pablo, you can share your experience on how was your engagement in the YES community and now in the WCRP Academy, very briefly, if you can.
Yeah, I think that's very important. So if you're early career, so you never know where to find this networking. I think networking is very important, you know, in any job, and especially in climate science. And the YES actually provides this network, you know. So there was an open call for participating in this WCRP Academy. So I guess that WCRP is very close to YES. So whatever they need in terms of early career scientists, I think they consult YES. And then there was an open call for that, and we just I had to write motivation letter, and luckily I was selected. And there are many other things that are happening in terms of opportunities. So scientific events, there are always like side events, and it's very good. I really recommend for early careers to get engaged and to join the community.
Great, thanks. I see one question to Patricia. How can the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services to be more collaborative and do more multidisciplinary research? And how can we have more norm and traditional changes? You're muted, Patricia.
Sorry. The idea is to find key topics in the region where the academia and the National Weather Services have common interest, and from that start the interaction around a specific topic and start to build up from there. That could be a good example that, for example, that worked well in the Regional Association 4. They have, and also there are some examples in even in Argentina, where you have links between the university and the National Weather Services. So this could be a good start to create those links. And I don't remember, what was the second part of the question? Sorry, can you repeat it?
Yes. How can we have more norm and traditions changes?
Well, this might be through one idea is that early career scientists might be trained with other skills than scientific skills. That was something that we discussed. And also to have more global perspective of problems, and from probably new generations start doing this change, helping from the youngest researchers start this change. It's kind of difficult with people that are already senior scientists or employees to start that change, but probably new generations might be interested to invest in other skills than pure scientific skills, let's say.
That's good. So there are two questions, not potentially related, but at the same time very interested, in the sense that we need to, or it would be good to foster the articulation between the WMO regional training centers, the WMO regional climate centers, with the research community more actively at the regional level, in this case for South America. So I would like to raise two questions. One is if the Wcrp Academy have any plans in interacting with the regional training centers for gathering information on training needs and also on training provisions. Maybe Pablo, if you can respond to this one first.
Yeah, well, I also, as for Narelle, maybe she's also more updated, but well, as far, actually we discussed about that because the survey would be very important that we spread this survey as worldwide, now that we have a very good representation in terms of geography. And in the beginning, we were not reaching so many responses, and we are thinking now about a strategy, how to disclose and spread, advertise the survey. And I think that's very important to have this kind of connection and also to interact and also to validate the results, no? Because after the survey, we have the results, we will have to interpret the results, and it's very good if we have collaboration with other organizations that have experience on that, have done that, and that they can also contribute to the interpretation and validation of the results.
Okay, and the other one related to the regional climate centers. Significant work, this question, or maybe it's a comment from Rodney Martinez. He says that the significant work is being developed by the WMO Regional Climate Center in South America, which can provide the opportunity for an effective interaction with the research community. So maybe, I don't know if Patricia, do you have any comment on this comment, or the interaction between this research community and the Regional Climate Center, and how the research board is trying to articulate or overview the work of
you mean specifically for the I mean, the research board is not only about climate. It as I explained before, I mean, it links all the possible, I mean, it's climate, it's meteorology, it's also the environment, and the idea is also to incorporate social sciences behind this. So we are not working particularly for creating the link with a specific part. It should be let's say a master plan that it gets a broad overview of integration. But of course, there might be specific activities that later Wcrp might carry on related to improve this integration within each region. Like, for example, this forum, which is a good example. But we try not to treat things separately. I mean, we try to create a plan for the coming years, which is putting the entire community together. The idea is not to split, but to sum up and consider other non-traditional fields of work that were more common in the past for the WMO. As I said, like, for example, a good indication of that is I'm a meteorologist from the very beginning, but then I migrated and I work with air pollution, and I'm now a member of the research board, but from my expertise, which is more connected now to the environment, or this relationship between environment and the atmosphere. So we have to have a broader perspective of the problem, rather than treating one specific aspect.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that maybe there is also another question for you, Patricia, which I think somehow it was answered with the previous comment, and on how to achieve these goals, and if you see specific institutions that would take the lead in achieving it, or really what is the next step to move forward.
Well, the idea is that we have a hierarchy in this organization. The governance reform created this research board, and we also have new working groups, or it should be created, the new working groups within each regional association. For example, now the regional association number 3, South America, has a new working group related to research and science, So this group might have to orient the work towards this integration between the academia and the National Weather Services. And this might happen in every region. So now we have this new structure that somehow is mirroring what is going on at an upper level, let's say. So to tackle regional problems, this working group within each regional association might be the group that might decide the priorities in relation to research and the strategies on how to connect, how to make this link between the academia and the National Weather Services. And according to our survey, what I showed to you some minutes ago, this gap between the academia and the National Weather Services is more important, or it's bigger in the developing countries, in the developing regions. So this is where these working groups in those regional associations are even more important, because the gap between these two groups is larger.
Thanks. I see one question to Pablo. If there is not the risk that the academy might interfere with already existing formation centers, already scarce of resources, most of them in the region. So,
yeah. No, it's a good question. Maybe it was not really clear because of the time, but the idea is not to interfere in anything. It's the other side of it's the opposite. We actually want to promote all these capacity building training activities. So the idea is to have a kind of a hub, a website like Airbnb, let me say, or booking.com, where you type, I would like to have training on downscaling. And then you just type there in a kind of a selection criteria, and then it will appear all the opportunities, all the trainings that are available regarding your search. For example, downscaling, So the idea is not to compete, it's just like to assess what is there and what is needed, and to promote what is already available.
Thanks. Jose, do you see any further question in the Slido that you have, maybe you have selected? Otherwise, I can check. You're muted, Jose.
There are several specific questions, Carla, but I don't see any other general. So,
okay, maybe I see one. The young scientists are not easy to get into the NMHSs. So how can we have more opportunities to work in WMO without any relationships or nepotism? I don't know, if maybe Patricia, you have any comment?
The World Meteorological Organization has open calls for certain positions. And this is, I would say that it's a transparent process where you are asked for, as Pablo commented, for example, to write a letter, what are your interests or what you can contribute with. And you might present also your curriculum and say what you did and with whom and so on. And then there might be several candidates, and then a choice is made. So there are opportunities out there. Maybe the question might be if these opportunities are well advertised, let's say. But they are there. I mean, there's something I didn't ask, I didn't look for when I was a young scientist. I didn't know, probably nobody told me, and later in my life, in my academic life, I got to know about these opportunities. So maybe this is a good question or a good point to highlight. I mean, we might need to advertise these positions more, and if it is for young scientists or senior scientists, but definitely probably we need other channels to show these opportunities rather than just the WMO website.
Yeah, I fully agree. I'm not sure if people from the Secretariat would like to further comment on these questions. Otherwise, we can.
Ricardo, I've just been adding some replies directly into Slido. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, I can say also for this question, I mean, one thing is to work like in the Secretariat from WMO, but also we could also, even the early career researchers or mid-career also, but with the research community is really important to be engaged in WMO also, to contribute in panels or in the different activities. I myself, I'm representative of the Regional Association 3 in the Capacity Development Panel from WMO, and I'm not a member, but I was endorsed, of course, by the National Meteorological Service in Argentina. But I think that this articulation between WMO and the research community needs to be engaged, because as you were mentioning, Patricia, in your presentation, in most of the NMHSs, the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services in the region, the research maybe is not like doesn't have the main focus, the research activities, because they have certain priorities and of course limitation on resources, which we have as South American region and as being developing countries mainly. So I think that it's important also to try to get engaged in these kind of activities. Jose, do you have any question to read out loudly from Slido?
Carla, yeah, there is a comment in Spanish which mentions about the lack of human resources as a problem to generate new products. So maybe Pablo can comment about this, if the academy can address this issue.
Sorry, could you just repeat the comment, please?
Yeah, that there are not many. One of the problems is that there are not enough human resources to generate new products in climate, and climate change. So that's would the academy would be able to provide some training to generate these new products?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I will talk about the perspective of early career scientists. So as a user, for example, me as a user. So when I did my PhD, so I had to look for trainings on the internet, on Google, for example, climate modeling, downscaling. I had to look for that, and I found that in Google, and then I contacted and I did this kind of training. Well, what we need, or what the academy aims to do is not to provide the training itself, but it's to connect the providers with the users. So human resources, maybe this more like a fundamental problem. So it depends on country by country. It's like educational problem, I would say, from country by country. But if you have the people that are, let me say, graduate, undergrad students, and they want to have training that is not available in their institutions, that is one of the challenges, that no institution can provide a complete training. So the academy can facilitate that. So they will not provide, the Wcrp Academy will not provide the training, but will facilitate how to find the training that is available there. And I think now especially after the pandemic, so we are doing a lot of online trainings, and we have all the capacity for that, and it will be easier because I can be, for example, in Brazil, but I can do a training in England or in Australia without having to travel and with much less resources, financial resource to do. So I think that Wcrp Academy is coming in a very good timing in order to connect what is available with what is needed.
Thanks, Paulo. There is, sorry. There is one question regarding the countries involved. Patricia, I guess that they're referring to the survey that you mentioned, the outcomes. So how did you divide between developed and developing countries and regions? Maybe people who are not aware of the regional associations in WMO would be good to, if you can comment, Patricia, on this.
Well, yeah, I was answering a previous comment that someone who said why Chile and Uruguay are not participating, and I want just to highlight that they did not participate in this specific survey, but they are participated very actively in the regional association and also in the working groups. Just for that particular survey, we were in a rush planning this survey, and was applied within a frame of only, if I recall correctly, 10 days. So that's why probably we got only 5 countries into the survey. Just to clarify, not to think that these countries are not participating. Well, this division between developing and developing countries, it's kind of risky because, for example, we have the association number 4, which is composed by the countries in North America and also the Caribbean region. And there are, if we look correctly, these developed countries might be Canada and the United States, and Mexico and the Caribbean countries might be considered developing. So sometimes when we define this per region, is different than when we split between developed and developing. So this is something that was questioned, and we are still working on the concept note before it is finally published on how are we going to indicate this division. And this division actually does not apply to all regions, as this example with region 4. So it's something that we have still to work on.
Thank you very much, Patricia. I think that there are many other questions, but I think that we are running out of time. Please, Helen, correct me.
Yes, no, I think we probably should go to the Slido survey now, Carla, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I just want to thank both speakers, Patricia and Pablo, for this great session. Thank you.
Thank you,
and
Carla.
thank you,
Thank
Carla,
you,
for chairing. And thank you, Patricia and Pablo as well. I really appreciate it. So I'll share my screen now so that we can go to survey number 2 for the Slido poll. So we've just obviously finished that session. So if you jump onto Slido, you should see a survey. It's just connecting. You can start entering your answers. Here we go. It's just jumped forward. Just let me see if I can go back. Here we go. So these are some questions around our Lighthouse activities, and we're really keen. One of the reasons for doing these forums actually was to engage and consult with our community to get feedback from them about whether these Lighthouse activities that we developed were addressing some of the most critical science questions. So we're keen to get your feedback on these. And as you've already seen, the next question is actually, if you weren't so sure about this, then we're giving you the opportunity to add some further description. It's good to see, Detlef, I know will be happy to see the that we've got, good support, but people wanting to know more. And so I think, I think that point I made about
I am happy.
the point I made that, one of the things we're doing in this ongoing implementation for the latter part of this year is continuing to engage with our community to tell them more about the lighthouses. So I'll go to the next question, but you can keep answering the first one. So there's a chance for you to add some text on what things that you might do to improve them. I think there's only just 2 questions in this survey, so I haven't frozen, have I? No, okay. Keep losing my mouse.
I think everyone's happy, so they didn't answer this one.
Thank you, Morel. So, oh, that's right, there was some more. So this is specifically on my climate risk. So that's interesting as well. So I think I'm distilling a key message here about the importance of continuing to engage with our community, to explain to them what we're doing. And this one really is asking about the capacity building needs. So a similar kind of response to the earlier ones. And I think, yes, that is the last question. So I'm just going to go back just to see how we're traveling. No one answered no. Very consistent. Okay. It's been a long session or series of sessions, long only in time. I think it's been really interesting and I'm very grateful to the speakers, but I am conscious that we're losing some audience. And so we'll leave this survey open till the end of my closing comments. So I'm going to move into the closing session now. And I might actually start by asking Detlef if there's anything, because I've taken all the talking time today, and so I'll give him the chance to maybe offer some reflections or comments by way of wrapping up, and then I'll come to my final slides. So Detlef, over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Helen. Yeah, in terms of wrapping up, we are only in the middle, and so it's only reflection on what we have heard today. And I always find the discussion very interesting and the questions. And so to some extent, as we said in the beginning, it's really an effort to inform you. And maybe the answers also said that we didn't inform enough, or may need to inform more in the future about, for instance, what Lighthouse activities do or plan to do. And so this is one thing that of course came out of the Slido answers, that not everybody was sure, but there's a tendency to like it, and I think it's an encouragement for us to be more like what we try to do here. The one thing I was just looking at kind of of course this is now participation, but in particular from South America. But if it comes to the discussion, I was in fact trying to figure out, is there anything specific about South America in terms of needs or in terms of input and so forth? And maybe I was a little, didn't listen enough, but for me, these are the typical questions we also discussed somewhere else. Not really figuring or pointing out that South America is different in the sense that there are different climate problems or there are different needs or anything like this, but it's more kind of in the choir of what we have discussed and heard before, which is good on the one hand, but it still leaves it open to how we might, in fact, as WCRP, engage more with the communities in South America. Maybe also train more, or maybe in fact tell people how to better engage with WCRP. I found it interesting. There are questions about WMO panels or positions. There wasn't any question about how can we actually engage with WCRP and become members of working groups and so forth. So maybe there's no need, or we still have to encourage more questions along these lines.
And Detlef, I'll just jump in there because that's a wonderful segue to some homework that we've given to those that have registered for this forum and that are still online. There's actually a third survey that we would like you to complete after the end of this forum. There's about 8 or 10 questions, and part of the reason for that survey is to address exactly your point, Detlef, is to try and learn a little bit more about what some of the needs are. So we've asked the Slido masters to open that poll now so that you can start to look at those questions. It will be open for about 4 or 5 hours, so there's some homework for you to do. and our wonderful team are going to do some analysis on that before tomorrow. So we'll get an early look at some of the feedback from you. So I'm sorry to jump in there, Detlef, but it was such a wonderful chance for me to advertise survey number.
Yes, and that's good. And in fact, it was a moment where I wanted to pass over to you anyway for maybe a more, cool. Well, I mean, the segue to the last Slido section, but also kind of a segue to the wrap up for today, because people might get tired, and we still have a 3 or 4 hour slot ahead of us for tomorrow.
That's right, absolutely. So thank you, Detlef. Thanks for those reflections. I appreciate it. And I will keep this short because I do know that time is marching on. So all I wanted to do in this final session, as Detlef said, we're only halfway through. So I want to just wake my computer up first of all. I want to make sure to remind you and welcome you warmly to join us tomorrow. I hope you're able to. These slides you've already seen. I just left them in here in case we'd run out of time earlier. I just want to reiterate this point about the WCRP really being eager to engage. That's both with our partners in research space, other agencies, early career researchers to strengthen our engagement around the world. I've already made that point. I've also made this point that we continue to want your feedback, which is why we're doing the Slido, and to say thank you, as I said before, and to welcome you to continue us on this journey. There's not time today, but at the end of tomorrow, we'd like to come back to this point, perhaps about, you know, how not at this forum, but in for activities after this week, we might continue to engage with you to work together, whether that's through some of our core projects or Lighthouse activities or other ways that we could work with you. So we'll come back to some of those points tomorrow, but that gives you something to think about ahead of tomorrow. For each of these forums, we've said to each of our regions that these aren't the final word. We'd like to do more follow-up activities. So we're keen to hear from you about what they might look like. And so this is the final slide with our the ways that you can contact us. The simplest thing is probably just to go to our website, but there are a number of forums that you can link to. The Climate Future to ask us questions, register for email updates. At the second email address, you can register and just keep an eye on our website, really, if you want to keep engaging with us. This is the advertisement for tomorrow. We have 2 interesting sessions. I've already talked about them earlier today. The first one then is focusing on the Regional Information for Society core project, which includes a presentation on Codex by one of the co-chairs from Codex, Silvina, and we've already had some questions for her already, and then a second presentation from Jaman on Andex and its connection. And then we have our round table. So, and then we have more time tomorrow for some discussion. So I do hope that you'll join us. And here is the third survey. There's quite a few questions, but I'll just, you're already there, that's great. I'll just walk us through between slow and fast about the questions. Some of them are ranking questions like this one. And again, it's really finding out what the needs are in this region. So this is what ways we could increase the participation from South American researchers in the WCRP. There's some options that we've put there. And we're keen, if there's something that wasn't there that you want to tell us about, then you can enter it into this question. What topics might you like to see? That's great, we're already in there. That's excellent. We've asked you to limit it a little bit so that we could focus future forums on topics of interest. This is really asking to think about, well, what are some of the areas where WCRP could make a difference to climate research, whether it's around coordination or training or leadership, etc. And if there's anything else, again, that we've not put in the list, here's a chance for you to add it here. This is something that we're very interested to hear about, is how we can work with you to identify gaps and support your needs. And we've given some examples of the sorts of things that we've heard about from other forums, so you can respond to that. Select as many of those as you think are useful. And if there's anything else that you'd like to add, then you can do that in text in this question. And this one is to find out what you'd like to be involved in. This is useful for us as well, so that we can go back to our core projects and our Lighthouse activities and say, look, this area is of great interest in this particular region. I hope I'm still there, because all of your videos have just gone, but I'm assuming I'm still linked.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
That's good. And any other activities that you'd like to be involved in. So this is a bit of homework. You see, there's a few questions here. We're keen to learn how we can better communicate with you. It's always one of those questions, you know, is it emails, is it social media? What do individuals and agencies like? So we're keen to get some feedback from you on this one. And this is a question that our regional focal points were really keen that we include. It's about how can we support the research community in South America to enhance and develop opportunities for funding? And so we've given some examples there, but you might have some suggestions as well. So this is a word answer. And this one now goes to capacity building and training. So it's pretty clear there. Your people have already gone and started answering those questions. Again, if there's some more things you'd like to tell us about, please add them. And that's the homework. So I think we're right on time to finish. So thank you for joining us. A big thank you to our speakers for engaging. I hope that we see you back tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you then. So I'll stop sharing, but I'll stay online in case there's some questions on chat, or if anyone's got any final points. But thank you all, and I hope I see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. And someone's asked, will the results from the poll be presented tomorrow? The answer is we'll provide the best assessment we can between now and then. So certainly a preliminary look.